right, everybody. I am late starting, but it was mostly because I was trying to figure out how to write the information, since this is going to be the very last chapter and the historical chapter, or the historical literature that ends the book. And after I am done with this on Sunday, I'm going to keep to the same schedule. I will be starting to read the Testaments, which I think is kind of awesome, because that means I will actually be starting just before the new series starts on TV. And I am looking forward to that. I know some of the Handmaid's Tale fans are not sure that they really want to watch this, but I think it is worth it. It is not the same kind of story at all, really. It is very different, but that is only because it is no longer looking at the handmaid's perspective in her experiences. This time it is going to be looking at the perspectives of the young girls growing up in Gilead, one of which is her daughter Hannah. The other is going to be kind of infiltrating. Now, I don't know if they're going to do this on the TV series. There have been mixed comments. Some people think that the person called Daisy on there is June's daughter, going by a different name, Nicole, going by the name Daisy. But some people think that they have altered the storyline too much and the timeline too much, and are going to actually make Daisy a completely different person. We will find out when we start seeing enough, I guess, backstory on the show. But yeah. So we'll finish off this book today, and then on on Tuesday, we will start on the Testaments. And on April 8th, the TV series The Testaments will come out. I will be doing reactions to that. I will also do an introductory live stream where I go through at least one teaser trailer. If I find others, I'll put those on too. And talk a little bit about kind of like what I'm expecting from the show versus the book, what I'm expecting for the show in comparison to both the Handmaid's Tale and Testaments book and series. So yeah, I'll just talk about that stuff a little bit. I do have a article that I'm going to read along with it that I think kind of sums up some of what I have heard from the showrunners when it comes to Testaments. I still have not watched any of the teaser trailers or anything, so that should be pretty fresh once I do that introduction. Anyway, I should get a chat in so I can make sure that my chat screen is working properly, because it does not always. Let's see. I need to refresh this. Here we go. Stop that. It is almost there. So let's just make a hello and hope that it works. I know the last couple times I've done it, it worked. It just took a little bit of time. Ooh. It is way bigger than usual. That should not be the case. Okay. I am going to need to straighten that out. Alright, y'all. Where's my chat box? Why is it so big? I wonder if I changed the settings somewhere that I shouldn't have. Where's the size? font size. Let's shrink that down. Now I don't see it at all. What the heck? Oh, it might be because I need a new one, maybe? Please work. Please be normal size. That isn't even spelled right, and it still looks the same to me. All right, y'all, let's go to the live scene. I am going to try to work on this. Hello everyone anyway, this is Venus Brown. I am back with the final reading for The Handmaid's Tale. This will be chapter 46 from the last part called Night. And after we're done with the last chapter, there is a historical notes section that I will also be reading. But let me go ahead and try to figure out how to fix this chat box, because it is not right. I do not understand why it is like this. Let's see here. I'm going to try to put this here and H Jello. That's what I put on the last one. Totally by accident, but to me it does sound a little funny. Okay, I think that looks a little more normal size. I think I will leave it like that. I'm thinking, because I've been doing a lot of messing with my themes and messing with stuff on various themes, trying to get ready for my next two sets of live stream series that I'll be doing, which is Deadlock. I'll be doing after watches for Deadlock, which I am doing one tonight around 6 p.m., but I have not sent out a post for it. And once I am done with this, I will be starting on Testaments, on live reads for Testaments. So I'm pretty excited, and I'm really happy that I did get finished with Handmaid's Tale before Testament starts on TV, and I am looking forward to seeing the TV show and doing the reactions. I hope you will join me. If you don't, whatever, it's your life. You can do whatever you want, but I'm excited. I'm excited. All right, so we are going to start with this last chapter, the end. If you have watched the TV series, the last chapter kind of parallels some of what went on the last episode of Handmaid's first season. The Handmaid's Tale season 1, episode 10, I think it was. And let me go to my image. The image on here, I actually think it's from the first image for the next season, for the next episode from the second season, but it goes along with what happens at the very end of the season, of season 1. Because she is in the van that is going to take her away. And in the story, in the book, we do not get a definitive answer as to where she's going. There is a hint from Nick that it may be Mayday and she may be going to a possible escape. But then there is also a hint from June that she doesn't know if she can trust what Nick is saying, if it is true. And the whole thing is very intimidating. And I think she also worries that she had just gotten in trouble from Serena finding out about her trysts in Jezebel's. And so I think she rightfully worries that this actually is retribution for that. But then there's also the situation with her former walking partner of Glenn, who ended up missing. They found out killed herself, and she is also worried that they could be coming for her because of that. trying to get information, or that possibly Glenn could have provided information that might harm her. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the chapter. I'm on the wrong page. There we go. All right, so I'm thinking it's page 265. Yes, okay, so night. And I should probably move things around a little bit so I can see, just in case I get any more chats or anything like that. I don't usually, but every now and then I will, and I'm not always paying attention. Plus, it doesn't, like, if it gives me the little bring chime that it likes to play, then I will probably hear it and know that a comment has come in. But sometimes I do not hear those chimes, and I don't pay enough attention, so I might not see it. But I'm hoping that keeping it on my screen here will help me, just in case I do not hear it. Anyway, night, chapter 46. I sit in my room at the window, waiting. In my lap is a handful of crumpled stars. This could be the last time I have to wait, but I don't know what I'm waiting for. "What are you waiting for?" they used to say. That meant hurry up. No answer was expected, for what are you waiting is a different question, and I have no answer for that one either. Yet it isn't waiting exactly. It's more like a form of suspension, without suspense. At last, there is no time. I am in disgrace, which is the opposite of grace. I ought to feel worse about it, but I feel serene, at peace, pervaded with indifference. Don't let the bastards grind you down. I repeat this to myself, but it conveys nothing. You might as well say, don't let there be air, or don't be. I suppose you could say that. There's nobody in the garden. I wonder if it will rain. Outside, the light is fading. It's reddish already. Soon it will be dark. Right now, it's darker, and that didn't take long. There are a number of things I could do. I could set fire to the house, for instance. And she has made several comments about, like, wanting to do things like set fire to the house, possibly use that match that she has for such a thing, trying to get a hold of knives and blades and stuff like that to cut people. And in the TV series, eventually the house is caught on fire, but it's by Serena and not June. And June actually ends up saving Serena from herself. But, yeah. In this, it's just several of her, like, inner narratives saying, I wish I could do this. Maybe I will do this. Like, it's this thought of setting fire to this whole thing, of burning it all down, destroying it. Although if it was the house, it would just destroy the house she's in, and possibly the people, but not Gilead. Anyway, I could bundle up some of my clothes and the sheets and strike my one hidden match. If it didn't catch, that would be that. But if it did, there would at least be an event, a signal of some kind, to mark my exit. A few flames easily put out. In the meantime, I could let loose clouds of smoke and die by suffocation. I could tear my bedsheet into strips and twist it into rope of sorts, and tie one end to the leg of my bed and try to break the window, which is shatterproof. I could go to the commander, fall on the floor, my hair disheveled, as they say, grab him around the knees, confess, weep, implore. Nolite te bastardos carborundorum, I could say, not a prayer. I visualize his shoes, black, well-shined, impenetrable, keeping their own counsel. Instead, I could noose the bedsheet around my neck, hook myself up in the closet, throw my weight forward, choke myself off. I could hide behind the door, wait until she comes, hobbles along the hall, bearing whatever sentence, penance, punishment, jump out at her, knock her down, kick her sharply and accurately in the head, to put her out of her misery and myself as well, to put her out of our misery. It would save time. I could walk at a steady pace down the stairs and out the front door and along the street, trying to look as if I knew where I was going and see how far I could get. Red is so visible. I could go to Nick's room over the garage, as we have done before. I could wonder whether or not he would let me in, give me shelter, now that the need is real. I consider those things idly. Each one of them seems the same size as all the others. Not one seems preferable. Fatigue is here, in my body, in my legs and eyes. That is what gets you in the end. Faith is only a word embroidered. I look out at the dusk and think about its being winter. The snow falling gently, effortlessly, covering everything in soft crystal. The mist of moonlight before a rain, blurring the outlines, obliterating color. Freezing to death is painless, they say, after the first chill. You lie back in the snow like an angel, made before children, and go to sleep. Except getting to that freezing point is not painless. It is painful and scary. Not that I've ever gotten to that point, but I do know what it is to start to get to a freezing point, but not actually all the way there. Behind me, I feel her presence, my ancestress, my double, turning in midair under the chandelier in her costume of stars and feathers. A bird stopped in flight. A woman made into an angel, waiting to be found. By me this time. How could I have believed I was alone in here? There were always two of us. Get it over, she says. I'm tired of this melodrama. I'm tired of keeping silent. There's no one you can protect. Your life has value to no one. I want it finished. As I'm standing up, I hear the black van. I hear it before I see it. Blended with the twilight, it appears out of its own sound, like a solidification, a clotting of the night. It turns into the driveway, stops. I can just make out the white eye, the two wings. The paint must be phosphorescent. Two men detach themselves from the shape of it, come up the front steps, ring the bell. I hear the bell toll, ding dong, like the ghost of a cosmetics woman down in the hall. Worse is coming then. Now, in the TV show, the van comes, I think, earlier in the day. I don't think it's quite getting to that twilight hour or whatever. It seems to be pretty much broad daylight. But anyway, just something I noticed. And I was going to put a picture of her like getting into the van, but I didn't have any. Like all the pictures I could find were her coming up to the van from the side and walking down the steps, looking back up at Serena and Fred, but none with her actually like getting up into the vehicle. So that's part of why I went with the image of her in the vehicle at the end. I've been wasting my time. I should have taken things into my own hands while I had the chance. I should have stolen a knife from the kitchen, found some way to the sewing scissors. There were the garden shears, the knitting needles. The world is full of weapons if you're looking for them. I should have paid attention. But it's too late to think about that now. Already their feet are on the dusty rose carpet of the stairs. A heavy, muted tread, pulse in the forehead, my back's to the window. I expect a stranger, but it's Nick who pushes open the door, flicks on the light. I can't place that unless he's one of them. There was always that possibility. Nick, the private eye. Dirty work is done by dirty people. You shit, I think. I open my mouth to say it, but he comes over, close to me, whispers, "It's all right. It's Mayday. Go with them." He calls me by my real name. Why should this mean anything? And in the story, they never tell you what her real name is. June was picked out from a list of names that she lists at the beginning of the story, but nobody really knows what her actual name is. Them, I say. I see the two men standing behind him, the overhead light in the hallway, making skulls of their heads. You must be crazy. My suspicion hovers in the air above him, a dark angel warning me away. I can almost see it. Why shouldn't he know about Mayday? All the eyes must have known about it. They'll have squeezed it, crushed it, twisted it out of enough bodies, enough mouths by now. Trust me, he says, which in itself has never been a talisman. It carries no guarantee. But I snatch at it, this offer. It's all I'm left with. One in front, one behind. They escort me down the stairs. The pace is leisurely. The lights are on, despite the fear, how ordinary it is. From here I can see the clock. It's no time in particular. Nick is no longer with us. He may have gone down the back stairs, not wishing to be seen. Serena Joy stands in the hallway under the mirror, looking up incredulous. The commander is behind her. The sitting room door is open. His hair is very gray. He looks worried and helpless, but already withdrawing from me, distancing himself. Whatever else I am to him, I am also, at this point, a disaster. No doubt they've been having a fight about me. No doubt she's been giving him hell. I still have it in me to feel sorry for him. Moira is right. I am a wimp. What has she done, says Serena Joy. She wasn't the one who called them then? Whatever she had in store for me, it was more private. We can't say, ma'am, says the one in the front of me. Sorry. I need to see your authorization, says the commander. You have a warrant? I could scream now, cling to the banister, relinquish dignity. I could stop them, at least for a moment. If they're real, they'll stay. If not, they'll run away, leaving me there, leaving me here. Not that we need one, sir, but all is in order, says the first one again. Violation of state secrets. The commander puts his hand to his head. What have I been saying, and to whom? And which one of his enemies has found out? Possibly he will be a security risk now. I am above him, looking down. He is shrinking. There have already been purges among them. There will be more. Serena Joy goes white. Bitch, she says. After all he did for you? So, like, same argument she had before, except this time, instead of after all I've done for you, it's after all he did for you. Cora and Rita press through the from the kitchen. Cora has begun to cry. I was her hope. I failed her. Now she will always be childless. The van waits in the driveway. Its double doors stand open. The two of them, one on either side now, take me by the elbows to help me in. Whether it is my end or a new beginning, I have no way of knowing. I have given myself over into the hands of strangers because it can't be helped. And so I step up into the darkness within, or else the light. Okay, so I believe that is the end of the chapter. Yes. So I think, according to the story, that Nick did help her out and that this is Mayday. I mean, as far as we know from the little bits that we've heard in the story and in the TV series, Mayday sometimes infiltrates the regime, taking the role of one of the positions in Gilead, so they could easily take the position. I don't know about easily, but somebody could infiltrate, come in as if they are a guardian or an eye or any number of things. They could have plants in place that make it look like they are an eye, that they are there on official business. I'm sure they have people that make documents to make it look like they are legitimately there. That's what I believe. That's what I think is happening in the book. But Margaret Atwood rightly makes it ambiguous, so you don't know for sure. Is Nick telling her the truth? If he's not, though, then why would he lie about such a thing? Like, is he trying to make her feel better or make her more willing to go with them? Less likely to try to fight or something? But no, I think it's honest. I think it's true. I do wonder, though, there are people that have made arguments with me about Nick in the story being openly like them giving us information about Nick, saying that he is on the side of Mayday, that he has done things to work with Mayday. But I find the stuff, at least in this book, questionable. Like, he may have worked with Mayday to get this to work out for June, but he has feelings for June, or at least we think he does. He may have been involved with Mayday before, but all we get really from before then is like a picture of he's utilizing services to get his hands on things that that are beneficial for the people in his circles, in his life. But it doesn't spell like really being for Mayday or really working with Mayday in a way that's actually doing anything to try to help somebody else. It to me, it seems more not necessarily self-serving, but serving to the people that he's working with. And I could be very wrong, but it seems to me like it is definitely leaves things ambiguous, and I'm pretty sure Margaret Atwood has said herself that she tries to keep this ambiguous, that she tries to keep Nick gray and doesn't provide a lot of backstory and behind the scenes stuff for you to know like what he has done in the past, what he is really doing outside of this Nick position as the commander's driver and as of Fred or June's fling. And in the show, we wouldn't want to call it a fling because it goes much further than that. But on the story, it could very well be labeled as a fling. She does say that she gets pregnant and he seems to have some interest in the story, but I don't know that I don't know. It's ambiguous. It's intentionally left gray. But now I do understand that Testaments is very different, but Testaments was written way after Handmaid's Tale. After Margaret Atwood had lots and lots of time for this stuff to be in her head. After Margaret Atwood also had this whole Handmaid's Tale TV series going, which it goes in a certain way. And that kind of thing, this TV show going one way while the story that was in her head originally may have been going a completely different way, that happens. That does happen with stories. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the historical section. Let's see. I'm going to go to the intermission screen first. All right. So if you looked at the sign, it says that it is it's this special symposium, this historical symposium in 2195. Now, let me go here. Now, I don't remember if they specifically said in the book what year it was at any given point. They may have, they may not have. I know that the book itself was written, I believe, in the 80s. So if, and I think she wrote it as if it was like modern day situation, as if these events happened in the modern day in the United States, which would have been in the 80s, and then gone on from there. I believe June's point in The Handmaid's Tale, when she comes onto the scene, when she's in this position with Fred and Serena, where she's introduced to them, I think they said that was her third position, which means she would have been there for 2 years, I believe, with the other two positions, plus whatever time that they had her in the Red Center. I'm thinking Red Center training would have probably been like my boot camp. It would probably lasted a few weeks. Few months at the most. So 3 years at the most, 2 years at the least. And so, I don't know. So what point would that have put them in? Maybe the 90s? Maybe the early 90s? Maybe the late 80s? I don't remember what year in the 80s that Margaret Atwood said she wrote the book. But something like that. Late 80s, early 90s. And they're saying this is taking place in 2195. At this point, Gilead is gone. Gilead has been crushed. So that does eventually happen. And part of what Testaments is a testament to that takedown. That takedown that had to occur from within. So we have this TV series called The Handmaid's Tale, where there is frequently this attempt to take things down. There are these actions taken to try to take bits of Gilead down, but it is not like this. It's not It's not a situation where it's going to take the whole regime down. It's situations where June and Luke are trying to get their daughter out. It's situations where they're helping the military take things down to get their daughter out, stuff like that. And then the very end of the TV series where they manage to take down the main Gilead hub over in, I think it was Boston. But that was it. Just that area in Boston. That leaves all the rest of Gilead still there. It's an important defeat, but it is like only the beginning of them trying to really get this thing to crumble. And like I said, it ends up having to be done from within. Doing it outside of the regime just doesn't work out. Unfortunately, Gilead appears to be too strong. They have too much information coming in, and they are too prepared, at least for the things that they did in the TV series. But I did definitely appreciate the ending of the season where they actually managed to take out the leaders in Boston. That's how they defeated the Boston area of Gilead, is by taking out those leaders, all those important leaders, and like putting Gilead into a position to where they did not have the means to get back in before the Americans got in. Anyway, let's go ahead and start with this next section, the historical notes. Historical notes on The Handmaid's Tale. Being a partial transcript of the proceedings of the 12th Symposium on Gilead Studies, held as part of the International Historical Association Convention, which took place at the University of Dene, Nunavut on June 25th, 2195. Chair, Professor Mary Ann Crescent Moon, Department of Caucasian Anthropology, University of Dene, Nunavut. Anyway, none. So it reminds me of some religious names and some like children's stories and stuff, but I just realized that when you say it fast, it sounds like none of it. And I'm probably mispronouncing, but whatever. Keynote speaker, Professor James Darcy Piexoto, Director, 20th and 21st Century Archives, Cambridge University, England. Crescent Moon. Okay, so what was I going to say? Oh, yeah, it says it's the 12th Symposium of this Gileadian studies. I wonder if these symposiums happen yearly or if they happen on a different time frame. Because if they were yearly, then that would be 12 years before 2195 would be the first one. Which is still a long time after supposedly the beginning of Gilead. I am delighted to welcome... Oh, Crescent Moon. So Crescent Moon is speaking now. I am delighted to welcome you all here this morning, and I'm pleased to see that so many of you have turned out for Professor Piexoto's, I am sure, fascinating and worthwhile talk. We of the Gileadian Research Association believe that this period well repays further study, responsible as it ultimately was for redrawing the map of the world, especially in this hemisphere. But before we proceed, a few announcements. The fishing expedition will go forward tomorrow as planned, and for those of you who have not brought suitable rain gear and insect repellent, these are available for a nominal charge at the registration desk. The nature walk and outdoor period costume sing-song have been rescheduled for the day after tomorrow, as we are assured by our own infallible Professor Johnny Running Dog of a break in the weather at the time. Let me remind you of the other events sponsored by the Gileadian, is it Gileadian or Gileadian or Gileadian Research Association that are available to you this convention as part of our 12th symposium. Tomorrow afternoon, Professor Gopal Chatterjee of the Department of Western Philosophy, University of Baroda, India, will speak on Krishna and Kali elements in the state religion of the early Gilead period. And there is morning presentation on Thursday by Professor Siglinda Van Buren from the Department of Military History at the University of San Antonio, Republic of Texas. Professor Van Buren will give what I am sure will be a fascinating illustrated lecture on the Warsaw tactic, policies of urban core encirclement in the Gileadian civil wars. I am sure all of us will wish to attend these. I must also remind our keynote speaker, although I am sure it is not necessary, to keep within his time period as we wish to leave space for questions, and I expect none of us wants to miss lunch, as happened yesterday. Laughter. Professor Pixoto scarcely needs any introduction, as he is well known to all of us, if not personally, then through his extensive publications. These include Sumptuary Laws Through the Ages, an analysis of documents, and the well-known study, Iran and Gilead, two late 20th century monotheocracies as seen through diaries. As you all know, he is the co-editor with Professor Notley Wade, also of Cambridge, of the manuscript under consideration today, and was instrumental in its transcription, annotation, and publication. The title of his talk is Problems of Authentication in reference to the Handmaid's Tale. Professor Pixoto, applause. Yay! Pixoto, thank you. I am sure we all enjoyed our charming Arctic char last night at dinner, and now we are enjoying an equally charming Arctic chair. I use the word enjoy in two distinct senses, precluding, of course, the obsolete third. Laughter. Okay, I'm not sure what he's talking about there, but whatever. But let me be serious. I wish, as the title of my little chat implies, to consider some of the problems associated with the Soy-distant manuscript, which is well known to all of you by now, and which goes by the title of The Handmaid's Tale. I say soi-disant because what we have before us is not the item in its original form. Strictly speaking, it was not a manuscript at all when it was first discovered, and it bore no title. The superscription, The Handmaid's Tale, was appended to it by Professor Wade, partly in homage to the great Geoffrey Chaucer. But those of you who know Professor Wade informally, as I do, will understand when I say that I am sure all puns were intentional, particularly that having to do with the archaic, vulgar signification of the word tale. That being, to some extent, the bone, as it were, of contention, in the phrase of Gileadian society, of which our saga treats. Laughter and applause. So some of the things that people talked about when I was observing the comments and stuff about this book, about this section of the book, were definitely about how, like, these people that are putting on this symposium, the ones in charge, the ones that are speaking, like, even though this is well over 100 years after the events of the Gileadian regime taking place, like, in many ways they don't seem to have learned. They are still being, they're looking at this stuff with amusement, and they're looking at this stuff in a kind of matter-of-fact way sometimes, but they're not, like, taking it as we think they should. Like, you are many, many years in the future. This regime has finally been taken down. It crumbled from within. And, like, maybe you should be looking at this more seriously and more passionately and with more, like, righteous emotion or something like that. But they're making they're making jokes, they're making light of the titles of things, and just making vulgar insinuations and shit like that. And that's just like the beginning of it. This item, I hesitate to use the word document, was unearthed on the site of what was once the city of Bangor, in what at the time prior to the inception of the Gileadian regime would have been the state of Maine. We know that this city was a prominent way station on what our author refers to as the Underground Female Road, since dubbed by some of our historical wags the Underground Frail Road, and more laughter and groans. So, and that's the other thing, is that it's this entire symposium and the audience, they're probably mostly students and teachers, professors, things like that, and they're all laughing it up at these jokes, and it's like, you're calling this the Underground Frail Road? Like, again, like, not learning and not appreciating what the females in these situations went through, and how much that they had to endure in order to try to get some of these people out, which is what the Underground Female Road or May Day and the other titles like that were for, was to try to get people safely out, try to get information in, try to spread word about certain things, anything that they could do to sort of undermine the Gilead regime and try to hopefully at some point defeat the Gilead regime. For this reason, our association has taken a particular interest in it. The item in its pristine state consisted of a metal footlocker, U.S. Army issue, circa perhaps 1955. This fact of itself need have no significance, as it is known that such footlockers were frequently sold as Army surplus, and must therefore have been widespread. Within this footlocker, which was sealed with tape of the kind once used in packages to be sent by post, were approximately 30 tape cassettes, of the type that became obsolete sometime in the 80s or 90s with the advent of the compact disc. I remind you that this was not the first such discovery. You are doubtless familiar, for instance, with the item known as the A.B. Memoirs, located in a garage in a suburb of Seattle, and with the Diary of P, excavated by accident during the erection of a new meeting house in the vicinity of what was once Syracuse, New York. Professor Wade and I were very excited by this new discovery. Luckily, we had several years before, with the aid of our excellent resident antiquarian technician, reconstructed a machine capable of playing such tapes, and we immediately set about the painstaking work of transcription. So, to me, the idea of not being able to play a tape, it might seem kind of far-fetched, but we're talking over 100 years later. Compact discs would have been the invent of compact discs would have been it would have gone on for quite a while. Cassette tapes are already a dying thing, but you can still get a cassette player. You can still get cassette tapes. It's not that hard. I have a couple cassette players. I still have cassettes that I actually play. And the technology behind playing the tapes, to me, even if you had no knowledge of tape players, I don't know. I don't feel like it would be that hard. But being that far into the future, maybe it is that hard. Maybe it is something that just would take a while to figure out how they're going to get the information from these cassette tapes. All right. Okay, there were some 30 tapes in the collection altogether with varying proportions of music to spoken word. In general, each tape begins with 2 or 3 songs as camouflage, no doubt. Then the music is broken off and speaking voice takes over. The voice is a woman's, and according to our voice print experts, the same one throughout. The labels on the cassettes were authentic period labels, dating, of course, from some time before the inception of the early Gilead era, as all such secular music was banned under the regime. There were, for instance, 4 tapes entitled Elvis Presley's Golden Years, 3 of Folk Songs of Lithuania, 3 of Boy George Takes It Off, and 2 of Mantovani's Mellow Strings, as well as some titles that sported a mere single tape each. Twisted Sister at Carnegie Hall is one of which I am particularly fond. Although the labels were authentic, they were not always appended to the tape with the corresponding songs. In addition, the tapes were arranged in no particular order, being loose at the bottom of the box. Nor were they numbered. Thus, it was up to Professor Wade and myself to arrange the blocks of speech in order in which they appeared to go. But as I have said elsewhere, all such arrangements are based on some guesswork and are to be regarded as approximate, pending further research. Once we had the transcription in hand, and we had to go over it several times, owing to the difficulties posed by accent, obscure references, and archaisms. We had to make some decision as to the nature of the material we had, thus so laboriously acquired. Several possibilities confronted us. First, the tapes might be a forgery. As you know, there have been several instances of such forgeries for which publishers have paid large sums, wishing to trade, no doubt, on the sensationalism of such stories. It appears that certain periods of history quickly become, both for other societies and for those that follow them, the stuff of not especially edifying legend, and the occasion for a good deal of hypocritical self-congratulation. If I may be permitted an editorial aside, allow me to say that in my opinion, we must be cautious about passing moral judgment upon the Gileadians. Surely we have learned by now that such judgments are of necessity culture specific. Also, Gileadian society was under a good deal of pressure, demographic and otherwise, and was subject to factors from which we ourselves are happily more free. Our job is not to censure, but to understand. Hold on a minute. There was something I was going to say. Oh, yeah. So they had comment about the accents and obscure references and archaisms, which is kind of funny to me. Like, we're talking about mostly English speaking people. Most likely, OfFred is an English speaking person. And after 100 years, how much has the language changed? It may have changed significantly. I know there's going to be a lot of like little things. We have all these new terms because of the technology we use and social media and stuff like that, but a lot of our terms are still fairly well the same. But after 100 years of like this drastic change in the way this hemisphere of the world has gone, and what I would assume other hemispheres of the world have gone, the other hemisphere of the world has gone, that maybe that kind of drastic change in 100 years makes a lot of sense. And plus, like I said, there are certain like words and stuff like that that get altered and changed, even if not gradually. The stuff that is made up, things that the young come up with, things that the old come up with. It just, I don't know. I have a hard time contemplating that the English language would change so drastically in 100 years that it would be difficult to make out most of what they were saying. But maybe with all this fucking uprooting and changing shit around and shit just dramatically being altered like it was, that would have a more dramatic effect on language change. Maybe. What was the other thing? Oh, yeah, he was talking about this idea that, we shouldn't pass judgment against the Gileadians because they had all this other stuff going on, all these pressures and stuff like that. And I find it kind of amusing, terrible, but amusing, because, like, we could make excuses like that for shit like the Holocaust, but we don't. We don't, because we see it as a particularly egregious event in history. I suspect that later on down the road, a lot of the shit happening now with the Americas and with Iran and Israel and stuff like that will be looked at as a particularly egregious point in history. And I know there are some people that look at this differently, that believe that they have their excuses and everything, but it seems like most people, they do not try to make excuses for these really egregious regimes and egregious periods of history, even if they know that it was a different place and a different time and there were different pressures and shit like that that were influencing who they were and the things that they were doing and stuff like that. And to me, the actions of the Gileadians in the first place to take over another country, to take over their country, frankly, and then force all these people into servitude, force them into roles that they did not ask for, did not agree to, all of that, like, that to me just seems particularly egregious, But whatever, it's my own personal opinion, which I know I am in a very privileged position, so what the hell do I really know about going through something like that, or being a part of a regime like that, or having our regime being like that previously? I just hope our current regime doesn't become like that, and it's looking more and more like, not necessarily like Gilead, but like a lot of the shit that went on to build Gilead is already occurring. It's freaking horrendous. Anyway, to return from my discussion, tape like this, however, is very difficult to fake convincingly, and we are assured by the experts who examined them that the physical objects themselves are genuine. Certainly, the recording itself, that is, superimposition of voice upon music tape, could not have been done within the past 150 years. And I can tell you right now, I've made tapes over the top of previously created tapes or professional tapes, and basically all it was gosh, I think you had to like tape over the little things at the top, and then you could record over the top of the music. And sometimes you could get like stuff superimposed, but yeah, I remember plenty of times making my own tapes on the top of old tapes that already had music on them, because I liked to record a bunch before we had the ability to just play music lists and stuff like that. I liked to record my own music off the radio station or off of albums, stuff like that. Record it onto tape so I could play it again later in whatever order I wanted. Our own little music lists. Supposing then the tapes to be genuine, what of the nature of the account itself? Obviously, it could not have been recorded during the period of time it recounts, since, if the author is telling the truth, no machine or tapes would have been available to her. Nor would she have had a place of concealment for them. Also, there is certain reflective quality about the narrative that would, to my mind, rule out synchronicity. It has a whiff of emotion recollected, if not in tranquility, at least post facto. If we could establish an identity for the narrator, we felt we might be well on the way to an explanation of how this document, let me call it that for the sake of brevity, came into being. To do this, we tried 2 lines of investigation. First, we attempted through old town plans of Bangor and other remaining documentation to identify the inhabitants of the house that must have occupied the site of the discovery at about that time. Possibly, we reasoned, this house may have been a safe house on the underground Female Road during our period, and our author may have been kept hidden in. For instance, the attic or cellar there for some weeks or months, during which she would have had the opportunity to make the recordings. Of course, there was nothing to rule out the possibility that the tapes had been moved to the site in question after they had been made. We hoped to be able to trace and locate descendants of the hypothetical occupants, whom we hoped might lead us to the other material, diaries perhaps, or even family anecdotes passed down through the generations. Unfortunately, this trail led nowhere. Possibly these people, if they had indeed been a link in the underground chain, had been discovered and arrested, in which case any documentation referring to them would have been destroyed. So we pursued a second line of attack. We searched records of the period, trying to correlate known historical personages with the individuals who appear in the author's account. The surviving records of the time are spotty, as the Gileadian regime was in the habit of wiping its own computers and destroying printouts after various purges and internal upheavals, but some printouts remain. Some indeed were smuggled to England for propaganda use by the various Save the Women societies, of which there were many in the British Isles at the time. We held out no hope of tracing the narrator herself directly. It was clear from internal evidence that she was among the first wave of women recruited for reproductive purposes and allotted to those who both required such services and could lay claim to them through their position in the elite. The regime created an instant pool of such women by the same tactic of declaring all second marriages and non-marital liaisons adulterous, arresting the female partners, and, on the grounds that they were morally unfit, confiscating the children they already had, who were adopted by childless couples of the upper echelons, who were eager for progeny by any means. In the middle period, this policy was extended to cover all marriages not contracted within the state church. Men highly placed in the regime were thus able to pick and choose among women who had demonstrated their reproductive fitness by having produced one or more healthy children, a desirable characteristic in an age of plummeting Caucasian birth rates, a phenomenon observably not only in Gilead, but in most other northern Caucasian societies. So if you think about this, they're saying, it sounds like to me, they are saying that they went from originally saying, okay, anybody who is in a second marriage, you're automatically guilty of adultery. And so you're automatically in this position where you may become a freaking handmaid, because if you've had babies, you can have babies. And if you were married a second or more time, then you are an adulterer. We're going to consider it a sin. But then they're saying later on, they made it even more stringent. And it wasn't just second marriages. It was any marriage that had occurred outside of their church. So, like, that's like really even more drastic and disgusting. Oh, you got married from a different church, from a different religion, or not a religion, then you're being sinful. Even worse. So not only did Gilead not progress when it came to human rights, they actually regressed, which probably shouldn't be surprising. We definitely saw that anytime the Gileadians felt attacked or felt like anybody was making any headway, they started to push back hard and like really take people's rights away and do really fucked up things, at least on the TV show. Anyway, the reasons for this decline are not altogether clear to us. Some of the failure to reproduce can undoubtedly be traced to the widespread availability of birth control of various kinds, including abortion. In the immediate pre-Gileadian period, some infertility then was willed, which may account for the differing statistics among Caucasians and non-Caucasians. But the rest was not. Need I remind you that this was the age of the R strain syphilis, and also infamous AIDS epidemic, which once they spread to the population at large, eliminated many young sexually active people from the reproductive pool. Stillbirths, miscarriages, and genetic deformities were widespread and on the increase. And this trend has been linked to various nuclear plant accidents, shutdowns, and incidents of sabotage that characterized the period, as well as the leakages from chemical and biological warfare stockpiles and toxic waste disposal sites, of which there were many thousands, both legal and illegal. In some instances, these materials were simply dumped into sewage system and to the uncontrolled use of chemical insecticides, herbicides, and other sprays. But whatever the cause, the effects were noticeable, and the Gileadian regime was not the only one to react to them at the time. Romania, for instance, had anticipated Gilead in the 80s by banning all forms of birth control, imposing compulsory pregnancy tests on the female population, and linking promotion and wage increases to fertility. The need for what I may call birth services was already recognized in the pre-Gilead period, where it was being inadequately met by artificial insemination, fertility clinics, and the use of surrogate mothers who were hired for the purpose. Gilead outlawed the first two as irreligious, but legitimized and enforced the third, which was considered to have biblical precedence. They thus replaced the serial polygamy common in the pre-Gilead period with the older form of simultaneous polygamy practiced both in early Old Testament times and in the former state of Utah in the 19th century. As we know from the study of history, no new system can impose itself upon a previous one without incorporating many of the elements to be found in the latter. As witness the pagan elements in medieval Christianity and the evolution of the Russian KGB from the Tsarist secret service that preceded it, and Gilead was no exception to this rule. Its racist policies, for instance, were firmly rooted in the pre-Gilead period, and racist fears provided some of the emotional fuel that allowed Gilead to take over, to succeed as well as it did. Our author, then, was one of many, and must be seen within the broad outlines of the moment in history in which she was a part. But what else do we know about her? Apart from her age, some physical characteristics that could be anyone's, and her place of residence? Not very much. She appears to have been an educated woman insofar as a graduate of any North American college of that time may be said to have been educated, and more laughter. They're laughing at they're basically making light of the college education system at the time. But the woods, as you say, were full of these, so that it is no help. She does not see fit to supply us with her original name, and indeed all official records of it have been destroyed upon her entry into the Rachel and Leah Re-Education Center. OfFred gives no clues, since like of Glenn and of Warren, it was a patronymic composed of the possessive preposition and the first name of the gentleman in question. Such names were taken by these women upon their entry into a connection with the household of a specific commander and relinquished by them upon leaving it. I would imagine that when she is documenting these things, that maybe she decided not to include her real name as to avoid giving things away. Like maybe she is intentionally trying to keep that out because she knows that anybody gets these things in the Gilead regime can implicate her and can implicate anybody else that's in any of these households that she's in. So, anyway, and we already know that Gilead just fucking takes it. Most people's names, especially the ones that aren't part of the upper echelons of society. Where did I leave off? The other names in the document are equally useless for the purpose of identification and authentication. Luke and Nick drew blanks, as did Moira and Janine. There's a high probability that these were, in any case, pseudonyms, adopted to protect these individuals should the tapes be discovered. If so, this would substantiate our view that the tapes were made inside the borders of Gilead rather than outside, to be smuggled back for use by Mayday Underground. I do wonder, though, if she is using their real names and there's just no record because fucking Gilead scrubbed all their original identifying information. Is that possible? Maybe. Is it possible they're going by different names? Is it possible that it's pseudonyms? It's possible to be anything, but she could actually be using their real names and they just not show up because Gilead was trying to scrub so much information. And the 80s did have the beginnings of the internet, but it wasn't like well woven into society or anything like that by that point. So there may not have been a lot of identifying information left in that realm. Elimination of the above possibilities left us with one remaining. If we could identify the elusive commander, we felt at least some progress would have been made. We argued that such a highly placed individual had probably been a participant in the first of the top secret Sons of Jacob think tanks, at which the philosophy of social structure of Gilead were hammered out. These were organized shortly after the recognition of the superpower arms stalemate and the signing of the classified Spheres of Influence Accord, which left the superpowers free to deal, unhampered by interference, with the growing number of rebellions within their own empires. The official records of the Sons of Jacob's meetings were destroyed after the Middle Period Great Purge, which discredited and liquidated a number of the original architects of Gilead. But we have access to some information through the diary kept in cipher by Wilfred Limpkin, one of the sociobiologists present. As we know, sociobiological theory of natural polygamy was used as a scientific justification for some of the odder practices of the regime, such as Darwinism was used by earlier ideologies. From the Limpkin material, we know that there are two possible candidates, that is, two whose names incorporate the element Fred, Frederick R. Waterford, and B. Frederick Judd. No photographs survive of either, although Limpkin describes the latter as a stuffed shirt, and I quote, "somebody for whom foreplay is what you do on a golf course." Laughter. Limpkin himself did not long survive the inception of Gilead, and we have his diary only because he foresaw his own end and placed it with his sister-in-law in Calgary. So in the TV series, we have Fred as Fred Waterford. And in the Testament books, I don't remember if it was Frederick Judd, but I do remember that one of the main, really creepy commanders in that book, the last name was Judd. It might be Frederick Judd. Definitely. not something to look forward to. This guy was a creepazoid. And it is so funny that when I was watching those ending seasons of Handmaid's Tale, I was like trying to see if I could place who this Judd character, this Commander Judd, might be. And there was actually a period in time where I thought that Lawrence might be Judd. There were so many things of his character that didn't match the character in Testaments at all. Like, I was like, it couldn't be the same guy. But there were some of the things that were happening and the things that he was allowed to do that made me think maybe he is the Judd in Testaments. And I think eventually I came down to he's just too different. I thought possibly after his wife died, like it could have destroyed him enough that he just became this horrible, awful person that is like Judd. But the way that the TV, and I know the TV series and the book are not the same, but the way the TV series presented him, even after his wife died, it just didn't seem likely that he could be the same character or that he could be representing that character. Anyway, Waterford and Judd both have characteristics that recommend them to us. Waterford possesses a background in market research and was, according to Limpkin, responsible for the design of the female costumes and for the suggestions that the handmaids wear red, which he seems to have borrowed from the uniforms of German prisoners of war in Canadian POW camps of the Second World War era. He seems to have been the originator of the term persecution, which he lifted from an exercise program popular sometime in the last third of the century. The collective rope ceremony, however, was suggested by an English village custom of the 7th century. Salvaging may have been his too, although by the time the Gilead's inception, it had spread from its origin in the Philippines to become a general term for the elimination of one's political enemies. As I have said elsewhere, there was little that was truly original with or indigenous to Gilead. Its genius was synthesis, which is a lot like the books. The books themselves, Margaret Atwood tells us, like, they are fictional. They are not real at all, but every awful event in them actually happens in real historical events in life. Some currently, some in the past. So, just something to think about. Not cool, but... Judd, on the other hand, seems to have been less interested in packaging and more concerned with tactics. It was he who suggested the use of an obscure CIA pamphlet on the destabilization of foreign governments, a strategic handbook for the sons of Jacob. And he, too, who drew up the early hit list of prominent Americans of the time. He also is suspected of having orchestrated the President's Day massacre, which most have required maximum infiltration of the security system surrounding Congress, and without which the Constitution could never have been suspended. The national homelands and the Jewish boat person plan were both his, as was the idea of privatizing the Jewish repatriation scheme, which the result that more than one boatload of Jews was simply dumped into the Atlantic to maximize profits. From what we know of Judd, this would not have bothered him much. He was a hardliner, and is credited by Limpkin with the remark, "Our big mistake was teaching them to read. We won't do that again." It is Judd who is credited with devising the form as opposed to the name of the persecution ceremony, arguing that it was not only a particularly horrifying and effective way of ridding yourself of subversive elements, but that it would also act as a steam valve for the female elements in Gilead, which I definitely agree. Like, you're putting them in these awful, awful situations that they have no real control over, and then you are infuriating them about something that is so freaking vital to their current life, and saying that these people did some horrific thing to, it makes sense that they would become furious and they would take it out on these people, and it would be a way for them to release steam. Take out all the other awful shit that these ants are doing, that these commanders are doing, that everybody in Gilead is doing to them on these scapegoats. I think I read part of this paragraph, but I'm going to read it over. It is Judd who is credited with devising the form as opposed to the name of the persecution ceremony, arguing that it was not only a particularly horrifying and effective way of ridding yourself of subversive elements, but that it would also act as a steam valve for the female elements in Gilead. Scapegoats have been notoriously useful throughout history, and it must have been most gratifying for these handmaids, so rigidly controlled at other times, to be able to tear a man apart with their bare hands every once in a while. So popular and effective did this practice become that it was regularized in the Middle Period, when it took place 4 times a year on solstices and equinoxes. There are echoes here of the fertility rites of the early earth goddess cults. As we heard at the panel discussion yesterday afternoon, Gilead was, although undoubtedly patriarchal in form, occasionally matriarchal in content, like some sectors of the social fabric that give rise to it. As the architects of Gilead knew, to institute an effective totalitarian system, or indeed any system at all, you must offer some benefits and freedoms, at least to a privileged few, in return for those you remove. In this connection, a few comments upon the crack female control agency known as the aunts is perhaps in order. Judd, according to the Limpkin material, was of the opinion from the outset that the best and most cost-effective way to control women for reproductive and other purposes was through women themselves. For this, there were many historical precedents. In fact, no empire imposed by force or otherwise has ever been without this feature: control of the indigenous by members of their own group. In the case of Gilead, there were many women willing to serve as aunts, either because of a genuine belief in what they called traditional values, or for the benefits they might thereby acquire. When power is scarce, a little of it is tempting. There was, too, a negative inducement. Childless or infertile or older women who were not married could take service in the aunts, and thereby escape redundancy and consequent shipment to the infamous colonies, which were composed of portable populations used mainly as expendable toxic cleanup squads, though if lucky, you could be assigned to less hazardous tasks, such as cotton picking and fruit harvesting. The idea then was Judd's, but the implementation has the mark of Waterford on it. Who else among the sons of Jacob think tankers would have come up with the notion that the aunts should take names derived from commercial products available to women in the immediate pre-Gilead period, and thus familiar and reassuring to them. The names of cosmetic lines, cake mixes, frozen desserts, or even medicinal remedies. It was a brilliant stroke and confirms us in our opinion that Waterford was, in his prime, a man of considerable ingenuity. So in his own way was Judd. Both of these gentlemen were known to have been childless and thus eligible for a succession of handmaids. Professor Wade and I have speculated in our joint paper the notion of seed in early Gilead, that both, like many of the commanders, had come in contact with a sterility-causing virus that was developed by secret, pre-Gilead gene splicing experiments with mumps, and which is intended for insertion into the supply of caviar used by top officials in Moscow. This experiment was abandoned after the Spheres of Influence Accord, because the virus was considered too uncontrollable and therefore too dangerous by many, although some wish to sprinkle it over India. So one of the things I'm noticing is that they are addressing everything by the age that they happen, by these events in history, but at no point in time are they actually using a year at all in any of it. So you can't place the time frame exactly unless you know the time frame that that event happened. And because some of these are very made up, there's no way to really place them. Just something. Okay, let's see. What are we doing here? Like when they say that something happened in early Gileadian regime or middle or later or whatever, at no point do they tell you what years these things happened. So you don't even know, like, how long is one of these ages. You don't know how long or what point do you switch from early Gileadian to middle Gileadian and so on. However, neither Judd nor Waterford was married to a woman who was, or ever had been known either as Pam or Serena Joy. This latter appears to have been a somewhat malicious invention by our author. And thinking this is malicious, like, again, if she is trying to document this stuff and she doesn't want to put herself and others in harm's way, it makes sense to me that she would not be giving away legitimate names. Like, even if she wanted the downfall of a certain someone, just giving the name of that person could also connect all these other people that are connected to them and put them in harm's way. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if she used pseudonyms to intentionally keep any of that information out so that it would be less accessible to the powers that be, to spies, to eyes, to whoever who might cause further harm to other people in her circles that she doesn't want harmed, or herself. This latter appears to have been a somewhat malicious invention by our author. Judd's wife's name was Bambi May, and Waterford's was Thelma. The latter had, however, once worked as a television personality of the type described. We know this from Limpkin, who makes several snide remarks about it. The regime itself took pains to cover up such former lapses from orthodoxy by the spouses of its elite. The evidence of the whole favors Waterford. We know, for instance, that he met his end probably soon after the events of our author describes. In one of the earliest purges, he was accused of liberal tendencies, of being in possession of a substantial and unauthorized collection of heretical pictorial and literary materials, and of harboring a subversive. This was before the regime began holding its trials in secret and was still televising them. So events were recorded in England via satellite and are on videotape deposit in our archives. The shots of Waterford are not good, but they are clear enough to establish that his hair was indeed gray. As for the subversive Waterford was accused of harboring, this could have been OfFred herself, as her flight would have placed her in this category. More likely it was Nick, who was, by the evidence of the very existence of the tapes, must have helped OfFred escape. The way in which he was able to do this marks him as a member of the shadowy Mayday underground, and which was not identical with the underground female road, but had connections with it. The latter was purely a rescue operation, the former quasi-military. A number of Mayday operatives are known to have infiltrated the Gileadian power structure at the highest levels, and the placement of one of their members as a chauffeur to Waterford would certainly have been a coup. A double coup, as Nick must have been at the same time a member of the Eyes, as such chauffeurs and personal servants often were. Waterford would, of course, have been aware of this, but as all high-level commanders were automatically directors of the Eyes, he would not have paid a great deal of attention to it, and would not have let it interfere with his infraction of what he considered to be minor rules. Like most early Gilead commanders who were later purged, he considered his position to be above attack. The style of middle Gilead was more cautious. So I guess this might be where people are coming up with the idea that Nick is definitely presented as somebody who is good and works with Mayday and is trying to bring down things and stuff like that. But this is speculation. This is speculation by professors and researchers that are trying to figure out Gilead's past based on iffy subject material. They may be spot on. There's a possibility, but we don't really know for sure. It's speculation, the same as their idea that Waterford and Judd could very well be the commanders that she's talking about. Speculation based on whatever information that they can gather that seems most correlated with her story, but still speculation. This is our guesswork, supposing it to be correct, supposing, that is, that Waterford was indeed the commander. Many gaps remain. Some of them could have been filled by our anonymous author. Had she had a different turn of mind, she could have told us much about the workings of the Gileadian Empire. Had she had the instincts of a reporter or a spy, what would we not give now for even 20 pages or so of printout from Waterford's private computer? However, we must be grateful for any crumbs the goddess of history has designed to vouchsafe for us. So, this comment to me is particularly absurd. You're talking about a woman who was fucking kidnapped, forced into a position of being raped monthly to give birth for these fucking commanders, not be able to have any fucking rights to her kid or ability to keep it, and in imminent danger most of the time of, like, anything she does could put her in fucking imminent danger of being killed, and you're upset that she didn't write, like, a bunch of information about the inner workings of the Gilead regime, you're also assuming that she'd know that much about the inner workings of the Gilead machine. Upset that she didn't take information from the commander's computer, like she would have access to something like that. Invading any of that stuff outside of what Fred was allowing her to access would have been very, very fucking dangerous and unsafe. So, yeah, nice wishful thinking, but really fucking ignorant comment, in my opinion. As for the ultimate fate of our narrator, it remains obscure. Was she smuggled over the border of Gilead into what was then Canada? And did she make her way thence to England? This would have been wise, as the Canada of that time did not wish to antagonize its powerful neighbor, and there were roundups and extraditions of such refugees. If so, why did she not take her taped narrative with her? Perhaps her journey was sudden. Perhaps she feared interception. On the other hand, she may have been recaptured. If she did indeed reach England, why did she not make her story public? If so, many did upon reaching the outside world. She may have feared retaliation against Luke, supposing him to have been still alive, which is an improbability, or even against her daughter, for the Gileadian regime was not above such measures, and used them to discourage adverse publicity in foreign countries. So, sure, there are all kinds of reasons that she might not have brought her documentation over to another country, that she might not have put it out publicly, that she might not have moved it out of where it was. But I would think if she had escaped Gilead to any other country, she probably would not have felt that she had enough time, resources, space, anything to be lugging around 30-something cassette tapes along with whatever else that she had with her when she tried to escape. And then there's no guarantee that she escaped at all. I just think, and maybe she wanted that information to stay there for future generations, like she got from the Nolite Bastardas Carborundorum comment that was scratched into her wall. Maybe she wanted it for them. But more likely, she might not have escaped. She might not have made it out of there. Who knows? Anyway, more than one incautious refugee was known to receive a hand, ear, or foot vacuum-packed express, hidden in, for instance, a tin of coffee, or perhaps she was among those escaped handmaids who had difficulty adjusting to life in the outside world once they got there. After the protected existence they had led, she may have become, like them, a recluse. We do not know. We can only deduce also the motivation for Nick's engineering of her escape. We can assume that once her companion of Glenn associated with Mayday had been discovered, he himself was in some jeopardy. For as he well knew, as a member of the Eyes, OfFred herself was certain to be interrogated. The penalties of unauthorized sexual activity with a handmaid were severe, nor would his status as an Eye necessarily protect him. Gilead society was Byzantine in the extreme, and any transgression might be used against one by one's undeclared enemies with the regime. He could, of course, have assassinated her himself, which might have been the wiser course, but the human heart remains a factor, and as we know, both of them thought she might be pregnant by him. What male of the Gilead period could resist the possibility of fatherhood, so redolent of status, so highly prized? Instead, he called in a rescue team of eyes who may or may not have been authentic, but in any case were under his orders. In doing so, he may well have brought about his own downfall. This, too, we shall never know. Did our narrator reach the outside world safely and build a new life for himself? Or was she discovered in her attic, hiding place, arrested, sent to the colonies or to Jezebel's, or even executed? Our document, though in its own way eloquent, is on these subjects mute. We may call Eurydice forth from the world of the dead, but we cannot make her answer. And when we turn to look at her, we glimpse her only for a moment, before she slips from our grasp and flees. As all historians know, the past is a great darkness, and filled with echoes. Voices may reach us from it, but what they say to us is imbued with the obscurity of the matrix out of which they come, and try as we may, we cannot always decipher them precisely in the clearer light of our own day. Applause. Are there any questions? Okay, so I think that's the very end. Very, very end. Okay, and like I said, certainly it sounds like a lot of the ideas that people are having that Nick was not so ambiguous as they try to claim, and that Nick was not likely to be this bad person, that he was doing good things, like in his heart he was a good person and he was doing good things to help out Mayday. A lot of it sounds like it came from this ending section, but this ending section is a lot of speculative theory. So it is not saying this is Nick's past, this is how Nick did things, this is the things that Nick did. It is saying this might have been what he did. This might have been in his involvement. This might be why Fred may have been harboring him, etc., etc., etc. Yes, you have testaments later that says that he is very involved in this stuff, but that came later. That came much, much later. And like I said, with the involvement of this TV series, that goes in a pretty stretched out direction from the book. They take as much as they can from the book and add to their stories doing that, but also very different from the book. The book is short, of course, and the book only goes so far, and the TV show just expands the story out much further. But I don't know. I just kept telling people, like, they were intentionally making him gray. They were intentionally making him morally ambiguous because they did not want you to know for sure if he was good underneath it all or bad underneath it all, or some combination, which I always think that most people, whether they're in a Gilead regime or some other much more appropriate country or whatever, that they are various shades of complexity and gray. They do things that are terrible and they do things that are good. They have things about them that are good at heart and things about them that are evil at heart. That's how people are. And I wouldn't be surprised if that was the intent for Nick to be a bit of both, a shading of different complexities and different realities that had to do with the awful situation that he was in, that some of which were his own fault and some of which he could not help, and dealing with possibly trying to do something better or make things better. But I also always felt that Nick was, particularly in the stories and in the TV show, Like, he was about himself and his love for June. He was obsessed with keeping June safe, but it seemed to be about June and not about the others. And I think people got upset when I made that comment that this was about this was really all about his love for June and was not about trying to help the people stuck in the Gilead regime. They did not like that. Anyway, let's take a quick look at our schedule. This is all I have from Handmaid's Tale. There we go. All right, so I will be starting Testaments on Sunday. Or not Sunday, Tuesday. I will start Testaments on Tuesday. I'll start with like an introduction. I think I did this with Handmaids. I did like an introduction of some of the stuff that she put at the beginning of the book. And I have to find the book and see if she did that. I don't remember from when I went through it the first time. But I'll have to see if she has like introductory stuff like that. And if she does, I will do that as my introduction. If not, I guess I'll just start from the first chapter. Deadlock Season 2. I am starting my live after watches this Sunday. That's today. This evening around 6 most likely. What time is it? It's 2? Yeah, I have time. So this evening around 6, I will probably do the first Deadlock Season 2 live after watch. I realized that Prime dropped the whole season at once, and it is all there. And I could watch it all now and try to do live streams, but I don't do that. I do one a week. It's easier for me to handle the load of work that I need to do to set things up, to edit whatever I'm going to do, and while I am watching while I'm watching these shows that I do after watches for, I do record my reaction because eventually I do put my reactions for them up. It's just a while after I do the live after watches. So it's like basically when I have a gap in my schedule where I can put them in, because they do have to be edited and it takes me a while to get them edited. So So that will be coming up, live after watches on Sundays. They will be once a week, just like I do with everything else. And eventually I will put my reactions up. It just may be a while. I still have Gen V reactions that I plan on putting up. I am going to try to put my last 3 Gen V reactions up before I start the Testaments TV show reactions. So I think I have Bridgerton Season 4 finale this Wednesday. And after that, I'm going to start putting Gen V episodes once a week. That's what I'll be working on, is getting those Gen V episodes done and put out. They are mostly edited, but I have a bunch of final stuff that I need to do to make sure they're ready. But it'll be the same thing, once every week. Probably on Wednesdays. And then Solo Leveling, we're doing reactions every Friday. I just started those, so once every Friday I will do reactions to Solo Leveling, the first season. And that's it for now. And like I said, Testaments, the TV series, starts on April 8th. It will probably be about a week after that before I get my first reaction. But we'll see. It depends on how long it takes me to get it all edited. And that's it. See you when I see you. Bye.